Here, what he means, welcome to so
Oh, we can spread out.
On the right, watch your hands, arms, feet, and legs. Those doors are sliding shut. Thank you, Warthogs. Twin to everyone, that means, and let's go. Welcome aboard Kilimanjaro Safaris, everyone. My name is Madison, and I'll be your safari guide as we head out onto the Harambe Wildlife Reserve. Before we head out onto the reserve, I ask that you remain seated at all times, as well as holding on to all loose items, as the roads out here can get pretty bumpy. Now it looks like we've got our all clear from the warden, so we're ready to go. We're going to be starting our journey here in the Little Ituri Forest. Animals that are found here have natural camouflage that help them blend into their environment. I'll have a few different animal species on either side of the truck from us. The first two coming up here on our left-hand side are two different antelope species. The one with the darker orange coat is known as the bongo, while the one with the lighter tan coat is known as the greater kudu. Now the bongo gets the nickname Ghost of the Forest for the rarity of their sightings in the wild, while the greater kudu is one of the taller antelope species at around 55 inches at the shoulder. They can also leap up to 8 feet into the air. Across the water hole off on our right-hand side, though, you can also see an okapi a little bit farther down near the shoreline. And the okapi, due to the striping found on its lower legs, is often thought to be related to the zebra. However, they're actually one of the closest living relatives to the giraffe, a fact that's best seen in their head shape. Now, many of the animals found here in the Little Ituri Forest, they tend to be much smaller and more compact than those found out in other areas of the reserve. The black rhino off to our left-hand side is no exception. While they weigh 3,000 pounds and can charge at 35 miles an hour, they are actually on the smaller side of the rhino family. This is because the animals found here in the Little Ituri Forest need to be able to run and break through much of the dense vegetation here without getting caught on anything. And just before we leave the forest up ahead here on our left-hand side as well, there will be some saddle-billed stork a little bit farther back toward the bushes there near the hill. Now they get the name for a yellow saddle-shaped patch found on their bill, and while they don't vocalize, they will rattle their bills as a way to communicate. Leaving the Little Ituri Forest behind us, though, we're going to make our way down to the Safi River up ahead. As we do, we may get the chance to see some Nile hippopotamus. The Nile hippo is born at around 85 pounds and can weigh up to as much as 5,500 pounds when fully grown. I can actually see some in the water off to our right-hand side near the opposite shoreline over there. They're just a little ways under the water out that way. Now, because of their weight, they're known as negatively buoyant. That means that while they don't float, they will run or gallop along the very bottom of the riverbed in order to get around. They'll also spend most of their day in the water to avoid overheating in direct sunlight, like the ones over on our left-hand side. At night, though, they'll head up onto shore and walk many miles away from the riverbeds in order to feed. Now, they're actually a lot faster than they may seem. On land, they can move at about 30 miles an hour. While in the water, running along the bottom of the river, they can still reach 15 miles an hour. On the island in between us and the hippos, you can also see some pink-backed pelicans. They get the name from the pinkish coloration they have during mating season, and they're colonial nesters. That means they'll nest in groups of anywhere from 40 up to 1,000 individuals at a time. They're also one of only 8 pelican species in the world. here as well on our left-hand side, especially up on that back shoreline there, are a number of Nile crocodile. Now, the Nile crocodile averages around 16 feet in length, and they can eat up to 300 pounds, around half their body weight, in a single sitting. Afterwards, they can go a few months without eating anything at all. Now, the ones back on the shoreline there with their mouths open, they're not trying to scare anyone. They're actually regulating their body temperature. They don't have sweat glands like many animals do, so they instead circulate their blood through their jawline and their tongue in order to cool themselves down.
You should try that.
Headed away from the Safi River, though, we're going to make our way out toward the Savannah. As we do, the vegetation here on either side of the truck will start to change. Coming up here on our right-hand side, we'll be passing by a baobab tree, also known as the upside-down tree, for the fact that they go leafless like this up to 9 months out of the year. They do that as a way to conserve water during the dry season out on the Savannah, storing up all that water in their giant trunks. They're also known as the Tree of Life. Making our way down into the Savannah, though, you'll be able to see how it's shaped by the animals who roam through it. Elephants will knock down trees to eat on them. Giraffe will trim up the trees while browsing. And antelope species and cattle will trim down the grasses. We're going to be passing by a number of different grazing species here out on our right-hand side, starting with the Hartman's mountain zebra. Now, the Hartman's mountain zebra, if you look closely at their neck, they actually have a bit of loose skin there that's known as a dewlap. Dewlaps help them regulate their body temperature out here, and while they are the only zebra species in the world to have a dewlap, they share the trait with many antelope and cattle species. Now, smaller groups of zebra like this are usually referred to as a dazzle. Dazzles will travel with larger herds of migrating species like Maasai giraffe and white-bearded wildebeest as a way to stay safe out on their longer migrations. Now, here on our left-hand side, all the way back by the rock wall there, lying down in the shade, or just around the corner where it starts curving back into the bamboo there on the far left-hand side, there are going to be a number of African wild dogs lying down. Now, the African wild dog is also known as the painted dog for their unique coat colorations, and they're one of the most effective hunters out here on the Savannah. While they may look like domesticated dogs, unlike domestic dogs and wolves, they only have 4 toes on each foot instead of 5. And as we make our way out toward the hills of the Savannah, out to our right-hand side there, where most of the grazing species are going to be located, we're going to be passing by some termite mounds here on either side of the truck. Termite mounds like these are made of a combination of saliva, dung, and dirt, and they can get as hard as concrete out here. Larger animals out on the reserve, including the Maasai giraffe and the African elephant, as well as the cattle species up ahead there, will use those termite mounds as scratching posts, wearing them down until smaller species of antelope can hop on top of them and use them as lookout towers. Now, as around this last corner here, off to our right-hand side, we're going to be passing by a herd of white-bearded wildebeest lying down in the shade of the trees over here. Just behind them, a little bit farther down the dirt path, are some springbok as well. Now, the white-bearded wildebeest, they are the second largest congregating species in the world, second only to us humans. They can congregate in groups of up to 1.5 million for their yearly migrations. While the springbok, one of the smallest species of antelope out on the reserve, they get the name from the fact that they can leap 6 feet into the air from a complete standstill, or 13 feet forward when running. Their name quite literally translating to springing buck. You'll be able to see them a little bit better right over here on our right-hand side, a straight shot down the dirt path there through the trees. Now, closer to us here in front of the springbok are the Ankole cattle, also known as Watusi cattle for the people who originally domesticated them. They're one of the only domesticated species out on the reserve, And those horns of theirs, they range around 3 to 4 feet each. And just up ahead here on our right-hand side, we've got a number of Maasai giraffe. Now, Maasai giraffe are unique for this very uneven patchwork found on their coats, whereas reticulated giraffe have very even, straight-cut patches. Now, they'll spend most of their day browsing, their way of eating, where they'll use their 18-inch prehensile tongues to get at leaves farther up in the trees. If you've ever seen a giraffe's tongue, it's a dark purplish color, and that's often thought to be an evolutionary trait to help keep their tongues from getting sunburned while they eat all day. Just up ahead, though, we are going to be leaving the savannah just for a little bit to head over toward elephant country. As we're on the next few corners here at the very edge of the savannah, on our right-hand side will be the edge of elephant country, and on our left, a small area known as Monkey Point. Off on the right-hand side, as we circle the water and hold just a bit farther, you can see 2 African elephant all the way up the hill there, where it starts opening back up into a small canyon there. And because there are only 2 of them, it's likely a small group of male African elephant. Male African elephants, once they leave female herds around the age of 12, either go off entirely solitary, or they'll form smaller groups of around 4 or less, known as bachelor groups. There'll be another chance to see them through this small gap in the trees there on the right-hand side as well. And just up ahead, we are going to be making our way off toward the heart of elephant country. As we do, it's important to know that one of the biggest threats to elephants is human encroachment. Often elephants will be pushed out of their native habitats toward human settlements, and they'll go crop raiding as a way to easily feed. When this happens, it can lead to human and elephant conflict, but thanks to research done right here at the Warthogs Reserve, we found that African elephants are actually quite afraid of humans. Using that information and working with Kenyan farmers, we've been able to implement fences around properties and crop fields. That keeps the elephants from crop raiding, as well as giving Kenyan farmers a secondary income from the honey that the bee fences produce. A big reason, though, why African elephant are often pushed off of land, like you'll be able to see out here to our left, is for mining operations. Elephants usually live on land that contain large amounts of metals, commonly found in your everyday smartphones and other electronics. That's why it's so important to reduce, reuse, and recycle many of the electronics that we no longer need or want, as a way to protect the elephants and the lands that they already occupy.
Looks like some hay. Get some hay.
Now, coming up as well here on our left-hand side in just a moment, we're going to be passing by some greater flamingo. Now, the greater flamingo is the lightest species of flamingo, And they get their coloration over a period of 1 to 3 years, depending entirely on their own personal diets of brine shrimp. Now, if you look among the group, you can see a few flamingo with a lighter gray coloration around the backs of their heads, or a much duller coloration on their lower legs. Now, those are actually a younger set of flamingo. They haven't gotten their full coloration just yet. Now, as they're feeding, you can see quite a few of them doing that up here. They actually hold their beaks upside down under the water. The filter they use to get the shrimp out of the water is on the inside upper portion of their beaks. And as we make our way back into the savannah out ahead here, out on our left-hand side, all the way back by the tree line there, are some white rhino. Now, whereas the black rhino weighs around 3,000 pounds, a white rhino can weigh up to 5,000. And they can still charge at 35 miles an hour. They get the name white rhino from the English mispronunciation of the Afrikaans word white, which means wide, not white, and is in relation to the shape of their lips, which are wide and flat. That's another difference they have from the black rhino, whose lips come down to a point based on their differing diets and habitats. Now, whereas the black rhino is known as the solitary rhino species, the white rhino is known as a very social one. They tend to travel in groups known as crashes of around 4 to 8. These crashers are usually family groups made up of females and their young. Now, just up at us around these next few corners, up through the trees here, it looks like we're going to be passing by a kopje. Kopjes are collections of rocks that jut out from the savannah. Lions often like to use these structures as a way to survey the savannah for any potential prey. The lions, they typically sleep anywhere from 16 to 20 hours in a single day. The lioness going out to hunt and protect the territory at night, while the male stays behind to protect the cubs. Now it looks like there are some lions right up here on the front of the main structure there. Now, because they are nocturnal, a lion's vision typically gets up to about 6 times better than ours during the night. It's also when they're more likely to start vocalizing. Lion vocalizations, which include chuffs and roars, can be heard up to 5 miles away. As we continue around the corner just up ahead here, also on our left-hand side there, you can see some warthogs just behind this fallen log at the top of the hill. Mostly their tusks are what's sticking up. Now, warthogs, they are burrowing animals. You can even see some of their homes down along this bottom ridge. But they don't like digging their own burrows. Instead, they'll often reuse older ones dug by other animals. There on our right-hand side, over near the warden's vehicle driver's side door, you can see an antelope species there, known as the bont buck. The name translates to patchwork buck for the very uneven colorations on their coats. And just up ahead, we are going to be leaving the Savannah to pass by Warden Post 20. Warden Post 20 has recently brought in a number of Nigerian dwarf goats. Originally, the Nigerian dwarf goats were brought in as a way to clear out a lot of the weedy undergrowth in this area. However, they also serve as secondary income. They also serve as a secondary purpose. They produce a large amount of nutritious milk, which can be turned into cheese, given to local villagers in the form of staple food or for their secondary income. It helps them not rely so heavily on the endangered animals and plants that are found here on the reserve. But living amongst the wildlife like this isn't without its challenges. Humans living near the reserve are always looking for ways to protect their lives and their livestock. Conservation organizations know this and will often look for solutions that benefit both humans and animals. Reserves like Harambe Reserve and those across Africa often work closely with organizations like the Disney Conservation Fund to help fund research and bring awareness to many of the animals you've seen here today. It stands to reason that the more we know about these animals, the better we can do to protect them and their habitats well into the future. However, that will be the end of our safari today, so I'll be dropping off just up ahead of the nearest boarding post. As we approach the warden's post, take a quick look around and make sure you have all your personal belongings with you, because it's a long trek back to Africa should anything be left behind. For any wilderness explorer scouts on board, you've been riding aboard this simple one. Now, here in Harambe, we don't like to say goodbye. Instead, we like to say Kwaherini, which means to go well. So, Kwaherini, everyone, go well, go wild, and enjoy the rest of your day here in Harambe. On the right, watch your hands, arms, feet, and legs. Those doors are sliding open. Watch your step as you exit the vehicle.